Hello everyone, it's Speaker Entertainment and we are back again, and we're now going to talk about tennis and just give some overall feelings, reflections and predictions as where the sport will be heading in 2021 in terms of players, tournaments, the overall status of the sport, and in general, as per the title of the thumbnail of this video, who will end up being considered the undisputed GOATs, the greatest ever of all time, as we are really now reaching that, I would say, pivotal point, or even the most pivotal point in a debate that has raged on for years and years and years. This, of course, has primarily centered around the top three players, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. And over the last certainly 7 to 8 years, there's always been this back and forth debate, particularly on social media, who will end up being the greatest of them all in terms of the men's game. And I think there's always been cases for and against, as each player wins another slam or spends another week at number one or wins another Masters, wins another consecutive title. But I think now in 2021, for me, we are really at that most pivotal and probably the most decisive point now, as we will probably underline who will be ever deemed the greatest player of the sport at the time. 2020 was a difficult year for all sports. Generally, of course, in tennis, we go over the kind of headlines over the previous year. The biggest ones, of course, being the fact that Wimbledon was cancelled this year for the first ever time in its history. The fact that the French Open had moved from its normal stage in May to being classed just after the US Open, the first time. And I'd probably think the only time. I imagine the French will probably move back now to it as close to what it's originally stated within the year, but we wait and see as further developments over time. We had, of course, Novak Djokovic's disqualification from the US Open, Dominic Thiem winning his first slam at the US Open, Rafael Nadal, of course, tying Roger Federer at 20 Grand Slams now, winning his 13th French Open, most unbelievably so, and Daniil Medvedev winning the ATP Tour Finals at the end of the year as well. So I think going ahead into 2021, really now, we're unsure as exactly how the tournaments will be laid out. There has been a recent release, if you go online, as the first kind of 8 to 13 weeks of the tour. The biggest announcement, of course, was that the Australian Open has been moved to February. As you all know, this tournament normally takes place late January, so I think that was just a precautionary step following the COVID restrictions. But just, I think, a relief that the tournament will be taking place. So I didn't mind that too much because it just allows the tournament to just get their social distancing and regulations in place before staging the tournament. At the most, I think it will probably be limited crowds, just like what they had at the French Open as well. So again, no problems or issues there in terms of that debate. So really going forward to the original title now, we'll focus firstly on who will be the greatest of all, or who we will assume will be considered the greatest men's player ever. Now, we all know the element that is used for the barometer or the criteria in terms of determining who is the greatest is the Grand Slams and how many of the Grand Slams won. Now, currently, as we all know, both Roger Federer and Nadal are tying at 20 and Novak Djokovic is still at 17. So if we look at overall, let's go on the basis that we will get all 4 slams this year: the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon and the US Open. So if we look at Roger Federer first of all, and just in case you didn't know, he did suffer another recent injury issues with his knee, and I believe he's been forced to withdraw from the Australian Open. So correct me if I'm wrong on the details, but I do believe that is so. So that's another major blow to Federer and his chances of, let's face it, realistically winning only one more slam. I would say the guy is now 39. It's amazing that he's still competing at the top level at that age. Most players now, when they reach that age, would cross over to the senior tour and start having matches there. So it's credit to Federer, obviously, that he's been maintaining himself for so long over the years. But I think now we do have to really come to realise, especially with this ongoing injury that he's had, that really generated from last year, that this year may be the last time that he's competitive on the tour. Of course, there is ongoing demand from all of his fans and particularly all of his sponsors. As we all know, Federer is the most marketable name within tennis, I would say. Now that I believe Sharapova, with her retirement, I do believe Federer is the most marketable name in the sport. So, of course, all the sponsorships and the ATP tour, they want to see Federer participate in the sport for as much as possible. But I honestly feel that if he continues to compete but suffers early round losses, fourth round losses, quarterfinals, and it becomes apparent that he can no longer reach finals or indeed win another slams, then I'll probably see him, retiring this year. I think we can all agree that Wimbledon represents his best shot. He should have clearly won 2019. We all know he had that 15-40 or match points. It's been all over the tennis discussions and debates. So, yeah, I think Wimbledon, because of the quick surface and you can win cheap, easy points on your serve, that really will represent the biggest chance that he has in terms of winning the slam. Never ruled out the US Open because it's a hard court, but he struggled there for so long. It's been over 10 years now since he won there. The last time he won, I believe, was 2008 against Andy Murray, and then he got to the final the following year, 2009, losing to Del Potro, and he's lost a couple more finals after that against Djokovic. But yeah, he's never really shown any signs of winning again at the US Open. Of course, we don't give him really any chance at the French Open. So yeah, I think this will probably be the last year that we will see Federer on tour. And primarily, he could only really win Wimbledon. So you're only looking really at one more to add to his tally of 21 at the most. So we move on to Nadal now. And of course, this, as many years, will be even more significant for him now. Last year was a major achievement for him, and obviously there were slight worries because we weren't even sure whether they were going to put on the French Open. As we all know, he has such a vice-like grip on that tournament. It was a bit disappointing, his Australian Open exit, because even though TM has scored a couple of recent victories over him, I still believe Nadal is a superior player to TM. He doesn't capitalise on the set points or match points that he has against him. So departing early at the quarterfinals of the Australian Open was a bit disappointing, and of course he didn't participate in the US Open of that year. Maybe ruin his chances following Novak's disqualification. That may have been another slam that he could have got under his belt, but he regained it all by winning the French Open again, putting further distance between him and Djokovic. The deficit is now 3, I believe, between the two, and of course this was also more significant because it tied him with Roger. So now 2021 is just now a huge opportunity for him to exceed Roger Federer's tally. Who's the greatest? Roger, of course, has had the ultimate statistic in terms of the Grand Slam tally, but that's always been countered by the fact that Rafa has the greater head-to-head between the two. And not only that, in terms of the slams as well, even though Rafa has lost a lot of the recent matches between Federer, I think the last recent win that he had over Federer was the French Open in 2019, I believe. I think they met in the semi-finals. So despite that, the fact that now Rafa has a major opportunity to get to 21, and I believe personally, if he were to get to 21 slams and bag, let's say, another Australian or indeed another Wimbledon, that for me, that would leave it absolutely 100% undisputed. I don't think really the most ardent Federer fan could really put a case against Rafa. If he were to win, let's say, another 2 slams at least, or even possibly another 3 slams, as unlikely as it sounds at this point, and another one of them would be the Australian or the Wimbledon to couple along with a French Open win, which he is still the overwhelming favourite, even more so. And that was proven by last year. The fact that he literally had no leading matches. He had those 2 matches in Rome as a lead-up tournament before losing to Diego Schwartzman in the quarterfinals. And then he had no more tournament play on the clay after that, but he still went on to really just barge his way through the tournament within the French Open, and he completely destroyed Novak Djokovic in 3 straight sets within the finals. So I'm absolutely confident that if Rafa is 100% physically fit, there's nobody that can really stop him. TM has reached a couple of finals, but Rafa's handled him pretty swiftly, and as I mentioned before, the most decisive performance against Novak in that final last year we were all concerned because that was on the indoor conditions, as well as not having the heat as what you would normally associate within the French Open, because it was staged after the US Open as well. So the fact that he was able to beat Novak in 3 straight sets just further emphasises what an iron fist hold that he has within the French Open. So I strongly predict that if Rafa can keep himself fit and avoid injuries, that he would at least win 1 slam. And as we all know, he's very competent at the US Open as well. He's won that tournament 4 times and he's been to a couple of finals as well. So he could essentially win with 2 slams as well. So I would predict that Rafa could end up with 21 slams by the end of this year. So we then move on to Novak, and really he's the one I think has a better chance of equaling or surpassing Rafa than what Roger Federer does, because he's the world's current number 1. As we all know, he's shortly going to pass Roger's record of weeks at number 1. He's currently sitting at 17 slams right now, and certainly over the last decade he's generally won 2 or 3 slams per year. But it'll be very interesting to see how this year pans out for Novak, because we've seen over the last couple of months the likes of TM and Medvedev really been able to get an upper hand and compete with him, certainly in some of the Masters, and we saw recently as well at the ATP Tour finals as well. So you'd like to think at some point, will these players be able to break through and beat Novak a lot more in the slams? TM as well, as we all know, was a set-up within the Australian final and really should have came through, but he kind of choked at the end. He should have won that final against Novak. So I think in terms of Djokovic's position, this is really his last chance to really bridge that gap. He will have to win, for me, at least 2, possibly 3 slams this year, because he will be 34 as well, so he's not getting any younger either. So eventually all of the big 3 will start depreciating. We've already seen that with Roger as well. We've seen Rafa have to play far more less games in order to maintain himself. So I imagine Novak, who plays a lot more consistently on the tour than Rafa, he'll have to be a lot more smarter in terms of managing his schedule. So eventually that may catch up with him as well. So for me, if we get to the end of the year and Novak isn't on at least 19 slams, and of course this depends on Roger not winning Wimbledon and Rafa not winning French. If he's in a deficit of anything of 2 or more, then I probably wouldn't say that he will catch or surpass the Grand Slam tally. But if he ends up the year maybe just being 1 behind Rafa or Roger, then he will be absolutely nailed on to surpass them both. And I think if he surpasses them both, along with the other records that he has, he currently has the most Masters win, and as long with the weeks at number 1, and he currently has a winning head-to-head record against both Roger and Rafa as well. So I think if he wins a slam tally, that will really make him undisputed greatest of all time within the sport as well. So it really depends on how well he can perform this year. I think that's the key factor. I think in terms of Rafa, if he can finish the year maybe 2 or 3 ahead of Novak, then I don't think Novak will catch him either. So in terms of the overall 3 players concerned, if I was a betting man, I would probably say 2021 we'll probably end up with Rafa leading the slam race with 21, and I think Novak may end up with 19, but we will wait and see what happens in the future. And I also do generally feel that this will be Federer's last year on the tour, even if he doesn't play a lot. You never know when his body will break down again. This is quite a serious knee injury that he's had for a couple of months now. So again, coming into his 40th year, it's going to be difficult to try and maintain at such a high level. So we will wait and see what happens on that front. And of course, we as tennis fans also eagerly anticipate when will the supposed next big 4 break through. We are of course talking about TM, Medvedev, Zverev and Tsitsipas. Who will make that breakthrough? TM of course won the US Open last year, but unfortunately that has a major asterisk, because I think Novak was on his side of the draw, and many people still feel that if Novak hadn't got himself disqualified, that he would have gone on to win that tournament as well. So I think TM has got to prove himself again in one of the slams. Hopefully he can beat one of the big 3, and then that will legitimise his claim that he can be a major slam contender. I used to think that Tsitsipas would end up winning, maybe perhaps the Australian or the US Open, but he seems to have just mentally fallen away. Zverev as well, there are huge mental issues, concerns of him, because he really choked in that US final against TM, being 2 sets up and not being able to see it through when he had multiple chances in the 5th set and the tiebreaker as well. So I still doubt whether he's got enough to see it through and win one of the slams as well. So really, I think we're looking at TM as being the guy that can possibly break through and win multiple slams and wrestle the stranglehold from the big three. But we will wait and see what happens in the future, therefore, as well. So those are my thoughts so far on sort of the predictions and the outlook of the tennis landscape, what will happen in 2021 this year. Of course, we don't know how many slams that we will get forward. Hopefully we will get all 4. I think at the most they will probably played with limited crowds or without crowds as well, so they won't want to disrupt the tour any more so than it has been already. So I'm pretty sure that we will get all 4 slams taking place. But in the overall answer to this video, I think by the end of 2021 we will be looking at a new undisputed greatest of all time, and I believe that player will be Rafael Nadal. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Who do you think will end up being the greatest player of 2021? Do you think it may not be decided in 2021? Do you feel that we need to wait for a couple more years? Or what's the criteria that you hold? Is it weeks number 1? Is it head to head? Is it number of slams won at different services? Is it number of masters won at different services? What's the kind of barometer that you use in order to gauge who will be the greatest of all time? Do you think we have to wait till all 3 players retire and then we can really take an extended look overall with their careers and then we can make a decision then? So let me know what you think in the comments below. I will try and cover more tennis news, particularly the main Grand Slam tournaments and any significant Masters wins that happen over the year. But if you want to see me cover any more topics within the game, let me know in the comments below and I'll try and provide that for you as well. Please hit and like those subscribe buttons and help me grow and provide you with more high quality content in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.